Hi everyone, so today we'll be talking about confidence intervals. So there are three things that we first need to talk about in terms of definitions, and they're actually related to each other. So the first thing is margin of error. So this is the range of values that a particular measurement is said to be within. So often when you see surveys and the data being presented, they'll state a margin of error. They'll say that 50% of people like waffles with a margin of error of plus or minus 5%, for instance. So what that means is that you could add 5% or subtract 5% from that value, and it really could be within that range. The confidence interval is actually the range of values that you get when you add and subtract the margin of error. So that is the range of possible values that a measured statistic can take on at a particular confidence level. And that takes us to our final definition here, and that's confidence level. So confidence level is the probability that a particular statistic is within the range indicated by the margin of error. And this might seem like something that you haven't seen before, but if you've read any news articles where they talk about statistics, I just pulled up a random one from CBC that's talking about Alberta. If you scroll down to the bottom, they do mention statistics throughout it. And if you keep scrolling down and down and down, they do actually mention methodology. So they not only talk a little bit about who was sampled, but there is this line right here. So it tells us that the margin of error is plus or minus 2.8 percentage points, 19 times out of 20. So that 19 times out of 20 actually represents 95%. So in other words, 95% of the time, it's within that margin of error. So this 19 times out of 20, that's the confidence level. And the plus or minus 2.8%, that's the margin of error. Okay, and then if you took their statistics and added and subtracted 2.8%, you would get the confidence interval. Okay. So it does actually show up quite a bit. And if you start looking for it in any of the news articles that you read, it's usually at the bottom where people don't get to it, but you will notice that they do mention confidence intervals quite a bit. So, how do we calculate a margin of error? So the first thing is that the margin of error depends on the confidence level. So if you want to be 90% confident that the data is going to lie within the range of the margin of error, then your margin of error is going to be smaller. Okay, but if you want to be 99% confident that your data is going to lie within the margin of error, you're going to have a larger margin of error. Okay, so margin of error depends on the confidence level, because the more confident you want to be, the more data you have to encompass. So on the left side here, we have E equals Z, which would be the Z score that corresponds to the confidence level, times the square root of P times 1 minus P all over N. Okay, so P is the percentage of probability, N would be the sample size. And when you have this, when you're given the probability, to calculate the confidence interval, you're going to take the probability and you're going to add the error and then subtract the error, and that will give you the upper and lower bound for the confidence interval. On the other side here, we actually have another way to calculate error. It just depends on what you're given in the question. So this side is when your question's about repeated sampling. So to calculate error there, it's going to equal Z, which is the Z score that corresponds to whatever confidence interval they're asking for, whatever confidence level they're asking for, times sigma over the square root of N. And for that one, if you're calculating the confidence interval, you're going to take the mean, and you're going to add the error, and then you're going to subtract the error. And that will get you the confidence interval. So here's our first example. So a poll conducted of shoppers at a mall found that 80 out of 200 had waited until the last week before Christmas to purchase their gifts. Determine the margin of error and confidence interval if the pollster must be 95% confident. Okay, so we're given a probability of them waiting until the last minute. That would be 87 out of 200. So that's going to be our P. And that'll be 0.435. Okay. They give us that we have to be 95% confident. So if we look back at our confidence level, to be 95%, we need a Z-score of 1.960. Okay, so we know that the Z-score that we're going to use is going to be 1.960. And what else do we need here? We need the N. Okay, we know the N is the number of people that were sampled. So that is 200. And now we actually have everything that we need to calculate the error. Okay, because remember, error is Z times the square root of P times 1 minus P all over N. Okay, so we can fill everything in. 0.435 times 1 minus 0.435 all over 200. And if we work this out, we get that the error is 0.0687. Okay, and that's as a decimal, since the numbers we put in were also in decimal form. So that's our margin of error, which is the first part of what they asked us for. So it would be plus or minus, let's put it as a percentage, 6.87%. So to find the confidence interval, we have to find the lower bound and the upper bound. So the lower limit and the lower limit is going to be the probability percentage minus the error. Okay, so in this case, that would be the 43.5% minus 6.87%, which gets us 36.6%. So that's the lower limit. And then for the upper limit, we're just going to do the same thing, but we're going to add the error. It's going to be the percentage plus the error. So we calculated our upper limit there of 50.37%. So that means that the confidence interval is between 39.63% and 50.37%. So whoever the pollster is, they are 95% confident, I believe is what they said. Yeah. They are 95% confident that the percentage is going to lie between those two values of the people who wait until the last week before Christmas to purchase their gifts. So here's our next one. A class has quiz marks of 42, 81, 88, 77, 90, 95, and 61. The marks on the quiz are usually normally distributed with a mean of 78 and a standard deviation of 6. Okay, so that means they've averaged these quiz marks year after year after year, and that's what they've gotten. So they've done a repeated sample. The first question is asking, what does the sample mean? Okay, so the sample is this one specific class. So to find the sample mean, just like last unit, you're just going to add up all these numbers and then divide by 7 because there's 7 numbers. And when we do that, we get a sample mean of 75.43%. Next, they're asking us, what is the confidence interval for a 90% confidence level? Okay, so to find the confidence interval, we're going to have to find the error, and then we're going to have to add it and subtract it from that mean that we just calculated, because right now we're doing that second formula. So a 90% confidence level, if you look back at the table, that has a z-score of 1.645. We're doing repeated samples, so we do z times sigma over root n. We know what the z is. We know what the sigma is, standard deviation, and we know that n is 7 because that's how many people were in the sample size. That's how many quizzes we had. And that gets us an error of 3.73%. So to find the confidence interval, we will do x bar minus e, and to get that upper limit, x bar plus e. So take a minute, pause the video, and do those calculations. And you should hopefully end up with the confidence interval being between 71.7% and 79.16%. So the average in the class, there's a 95% confidence that they will be within this range. So good luck with the homework, and have a great rest of the day.